Hey, Don, it's great to have you with me today. I want to go back and just share with the listeners because I like to let others know how we've connected. And so we connected through another podcaster, Jacqueline. So I appreciate people like that, reaching out and saying, hey, reach out to Don or, whoever else it is.
Yeah.
And, you need to talk to him. So with that being said, Don, I know we connected and you have a journey of your own that you like to share with others, and maybe they can get some insight, some help or whatever, they're going through. Maybe they can reach out to you or somebody else. But
Yeah.
why don't we just start off with like, who's Don? What's he doing? And, and then we can go back and see how you got to where you are today.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'm a 27-year Air Force veteran, and I am working in the area of leadership training and coaching, speaking training and coaching. It's really working with organizations to help them develop their leaders. There's a lot of really good leaders out there. There's some not so really good leaders out there, right? And the new Gallup poll just said that 52% of American workers are looking to change. And a lot of it's how they feel connected. And leaders need to help their people feel connected. So I love working with leaders to help them understand how to do that, not just manage projects, right? But treat people as people. But I'm also, particularly in that area, doing career transition coaching, helping military and non-military, help them find that next job that really lights their soul up. It energizes them. Because I think too many people, goes back to the retention piece, right? If you're not happy in your job and in your career, then you're going to be looking. And part of it is maybe not the right role, maybe not the right leader, maybe not the right values, culture. And I think we take a job and we think, especially baby boomers, we think we're going to stay there for a career, right? Loyalty. Not so much with the Gen Z today. They're hopping. In fact, they don't even want to be in an office, right? So understanding who people are. So I love learning more and more about that and helping leaders and organizations work through all of those.
Okay, great. And so, I mean, you obviously didn't get to where you are today, right? Just like that, So I know you have some history, a journey of your own. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to let you decide like where you want to start and, what you think might help the listeners, whatever you went through that they could kind of get some kind of assistance if they're going through the same thing or have. So I'll let you start it off.
Now, the hard part of this is there's so many stories that we all have that help define us. And it's interesting, just as a sidelight, I joined the Maxwell leadership team. It was then the John Maxwell team, right? John Maxwell's the #1 leadership author, 86 books. And I get to teach his material, and I combine his material with my experiences to bring material. And we had a private session, private meaning 200 people with John, were executive directors of the John Maxwell team at the time. And the gal stands up and says, John, I'm teaching your material, but your stories aren't resonating. And he starts laughing, and the crowd's kind of laughing and not laughing. And John says, because they're not your stories, they're my stories. You need to tell your stories. And she says, John, I don't have any stories. My life is boring. And he goes, oh, contraire. Yeah. You have lots of stories. So just a couple of months before that, I had been in Amarillo, Texas on a job, and I was there for the weekend. And I was reading the book from John Maxwell, newest book, Intentional Living. And he says, write out your stories. So I sat there in the Schloskys in downtown Amarillo on a Sunday afternoon for about an hour and just like first grade, what came to mind? Second grade, third grade, college, freshman, sophomore, military assignments. And I got 4 pages of stories, things that just triggered, that helped define me who I am, right? Positive and negative. So that's the hardest part is figuring out in your journey, what are the real important ones? But I thought about one, learn about yourself. And it was how I focus in on quality, performance, right? It's that work ethic. And I remember we were in Bitburg, Germany, and I was a captain. And just before I got there, they had a NATO tactical evaluation, which was a huge inspection. And we got an unsatisfactory rating on the base denial plan. And my office was the OPR, Office of Primary Responsibility, for this plan. And it basically said if the Russians are overrunning Bitburg Air Base, what do we destroy? What do we take with so that they can't use it against us? Right? Facilities, utilities, vehicles, munitions, guns, everything. Well, the wing commander had gave it to a major over in base supply. So after about a year, I called. We're coming in about a year away, 8 months away from the next inspection. And the problem was, if you don't solve the unsatisfactory, you, your squadron commander, your group commander, your wing commander all get to go have a private meeting with the 4-star general. That's not a good thing, right? You don't want that to happen.
What happens then? What happens?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably the captain gets fired, right? So maybe the wing commander, who knows, right? That's just different things happen. So I went over to the major and I said, "Hey, what's happening?" And she said, "It's not my job." I said, "What do you mean it's not your job? The wing commander gave it to you." She goes, "No, it's not my job. I'm not doing it." So I had some conversations with some of the other OCR's, Office of Secondary Responsibility, basically. And we talked about it. We came up with a strategy. And next thing we knew, we were on our way into the vice wing commander. We haven't even briefed our squadron commanders yet. And we are having a meeting with the vice wing commander. He loves the idea. We go into this meeting with all these wing agencies. He gives direction that we're going to do it this way. And long story short, we wrote the plan. We got a satisfactory. And we stayed out of the 4-star general's office. But it taught me a lot about myself, of responsibility. What's that inherent thing inside of me that says, I have to do the job right. When it's my responsibility, I will do whatever it takes to get it done and get it done right. And it took some long nights, and it took some stress in the marriage, right? Missed some family time, but it was probably one of those key things that set me apart, that helped me on my way to making colonel in the Air Force, which is a pretty significant promotion rank. So that's kind of one of those things, learning about yourself. And there's a whole bunch of stories I could talk about, but I don't know if you got any on yours, as we could just have a conversation, but it's how we develop ourselves.
Yeah. So you're talking about like work ethic and stuff, and did you have some kind of role model outside of that you might have been around, that you saw, hey, this is what he's doing, and you eyeballed that?
What was neat at Bitburg, it was I don't want to say prima donnas, because I didn't want to think of myself that way, but it was people who were really outstanding performers. So all around me, the work ethic of holding each other accountable, of encouraging each other, of fellowship was very strong. So I knew that if I needed any help, which I did, I could reach out to anybody and they would help. It was like when I joined Booz Allen Hamilton after I retired from the military. They said there's 2 cardinal rules. One, if you need help, ask for it. If somebody asks you for help, you give it. You can screw up in a lot of ways, but don't screw up on those 2, right? And I think that's kind of the way. It was never stated that way, but it was just we won best civil engineer squadron in the Air Force when I got there. It was really people before me, but 3-4 months into my 4 years there, we won best in the Air Force. And you could just tell German civilians, U.S. military, everybody just came together and worked hard. And we played hard. Not to say that we were in the bar, drunk, carousing, throwing people around, but it was just, we went out, we had fun.
That's good. Yeah, I asked you because I feel like for me, I felt like I built that work ethic just not, I don't want to say like grinding, but saying yes, I'm responsible. I got to keep showing up, doing this and doing that. And I want to say it was from my father, right? And he had a bar, so him and his mother had a bar, my grandmother, and he would basically run the bar in a sense. Okay. Right? So he was working there night shift, running the bar if he didn't have any bartenders, and then he's stocking up throughout the day sometimes or whatever. But and I know he had some jobs before that, as I was growing up as a child, and Yeah, so I mean, the bar thing is what I saw the most because that's where he spent most of his time, and you know, he didn't cry about it. He didn't say anything bad about it. He just kept doing his thing, you know. So I feel like that somehow was ingrained in me just watching it. What I mean, it's weird when we're older and we think back, you know, where did I get this from? How am I the way I am today? And if we're talking about work ethic, I think that's, for me, that's where it came from. And I'm glad you shared that story. I think a lot of people today are having that problem. Like, they don't want to show up to work. They don't, you know, it's not their job. You know, they're just like hands off. So hopefully, you know, people listening to this or whatever, they might change their course, you know. And so, I mean, what would you say to somebody like that if, you know, they're not in that position where they're, you know, they're not in their head or whatever it is, right? They're not in that space of saying, yeah, this is my job. I need to step up. I need to keep moving forward. Even if it isn't their job, like, you know, it's a responsibility. I mean, what would you say to somebody that wants to kind of like make a shift and move forward?
There's several things that pop up. One is I need to understand who they are, right? One thing I use is the DISC personality assessment. You know, are they a dominant, influencing, steady, compliant person? What's their natural personality? It's how they communicate. It's how they behave. You know, how we do one thing is how we do all things. So need to understand them as a person, but also need to understand their generation, right? As a baby boomer, we're very loyal. All we wanted was a job. I will get in. I'll do what I need to do. Today, the Gen Z that are the youngest in the workplace, all they've ever known is the iPhone. It's always been there. The gig economy, they don't want to work in a 9 to 5. How many restaurant jobs are out there? You and I don't know what generation you are. I'm going to guess is X.
Yeah.
I'll be after baby boomer. You know, as it's transitioned, there's 5 generations in the workplace. I worked as a busboy. I worked at a gas station. I did anything I could to earn money, right? Today, Gen Z doesn't want to do that. They want to get on, have a gig economy, and leverage email marketing and digital marketing, and they're making big money doing some of these kind of things. So it's just a whole different perspective. So I push back a little bit on people who don't want to work. They want to work in a different way. Now, there's probably some people who don't want to work. There are some baby boomers who don't want to work. So the whole gist there is understand who they are. And then I always have to ask, how was it portrayed to you, what your responsibilities were? You know, Dave Ramsey always says to be unclear is to be unkind. We have to be very clear with our people. This is what I expect. Like with Booz Allen, right? Ask for help, give help. Very clear. And they had 8 ethical issues that you could get fired for. Just kind of below those 2 cardinal rules. Integrity, stuff like that. So it set the culture of the organization. And too often today, especially in small businesses, medium businesses, there's not a business plan. There's not a clear culture. If they've done something with vision, mission, goals, it sits in a corner on a shelf somewhere, or maybe in a poster on the wall, but they don't talk about it. They don't bring it forward. You know, Dave Ramsey, he brings one of those forward at value every week with a story about how he saw it this last week, how he experienced it, how somebody else experienced it. And he's constantly reinforcing what I expect. And if the organization isn't doing that, you know, it sets a confusion amongst the individuals. So there's several different things I always have to look at before I judge too harshly on what's going on.
Yeah. You know, do you think people would actually like step up and say, hey, look, I want to make myself better and, you know, seek help, you know, like in your position, like, hey, you know, Don, can you help me out with this?
Yeah. I mean, we certainly did in my career. We were always helping each other out. It was interesting. I was working on a Department of Energy job with Booz Allen. We were the subcontractor to a joint venture. And I watched the primes, vice presidents. They wouldn't ask for each other for help. No way. I even went in and made a comment to one and said, hey, I was talking to so-and-so, and I think this is a real thing that we ought to talk about because I'd love to get, and that person just blew up and said, I don't give a rat's ass about that person. Sorry, we have a rat's about that person, blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're a team here, right? We work together. But they were from different companies connected through the contract, but did not have any respect or trust in each other. And one of the deputy CEO of the company saw that and did some bunch of team building exercises trying to bring them together. So it was good that he saw it. But if you can't work together, I heard today Amy Porterfield, I just love her. She's a digital marketing whiz. She's really grown a business in 14 years. She topped $100 million as total business in her 14 years. She topped over $100 million of revenue this year. And, but she was talking about, now I lost my train of thought, but she was talking today about if you can't work together, she says, I sometimes accept B players. And she questioned herself, why am I accepting B players? I want A players. I want people who are motivated for the company, who are going to do what they need to do, who love it as much as I do. And nobody ever loves it like the CEO, right? But you got to think about who you're accepting. And I know too often in the military, we accepted C players. And I don't know why. But we would overload the A players until they burned out. And they would leave the service. It was too bad. We saw too many of my peers who were just super sharp get out. They got out before 20, and they could have been great lieutenant colonels and maybe generals. And but they got burned out because they just got overloaded. But yet the C players hung around, just kind of doing the minimum. So it takes courage in the leadership to make some decisions. I had a boss call me in one time. He said, you're not cutting the mustard. We need to talk about this. Yeah. It was a rough conversation.
Yeah.
But it shook me up and it turned me around. And I go back, I was thinking a minute ago with some stories, right? Because I was in high school, one of my first jobs, detasseling corn. We were down in the fields 10, 12 hours a day. It was hot, 100 degrees in Wisconsin. You're sweating and you're trying to reach up to pull tassels. And I guess I was missing a lot of tassels. And I was singing and we were joking around. And I got the lowest bonus of anybody. That kind of hurt. But taught me a lesson. Be serious. So those things probably formed who I was when all of a sudden, like go back to Bitburg, based on Isle Plan, when I saw something not going right, I had to fix it.
Yeah, experiencing stuff throughout your life makes you, change, right? And as we get old, I know, right? And as we get older, like we don't see that until we're older, right? And I know there's that quote, you can't connect the dots unless it was like in the past, along those lines. I know it's Steve Jobs or whatever, and it's so true. You can kind of aim for where you want to go forward in the future, but you're not exactly going to go in that same direction. So I mean, you were in the military, and somehow or another you came into John Maxwell, the leadership and all that stuff. I mean, what kind of like sparked your interest in leaning into the leadership part for helping businesses and stuff?
When I was in the military, I got opportunities to be in rooms where there was a facilitator. And I saw myself facilitating rooms like that. I led an A76, which is a cost comparison, government versus contractor. And I was the kind of the overall, and there was other people we were trying to put the government bid together. And I really enjoyed being in the front of the room and helping facilitate conversations and come to a solution. So when all of a sudden I got the opportunity later, when I was with Booz Allen, it's like, yeah, I want to do that. I've always kind of wanted to do that. I would sit on airplanes when I was flying someplace, commercial airlines, reading the magazine that they don't have anymore, right? and reading about entrepreneurs, leaders in business. I said, I could do that. You know, I'm growing, I'm developing those skills. I could do that. So it just became kind of a want. If you think about Think and Grow Rich, right? It became a want. Probably it was a wish, then a want, and it became a desire, and it became an obsession. And I just decided that's what I wanted to do. This was time. I got tired of government contracting. It is, how do you describe it? It's very frustrating. You know, you put a lot of effort into it. The government can throw your bid out for all kinds of reasons. I remember one week we had 2 bids. We lost both of them. One of them said, we're making you unsatisfactory because you had a mandatory 2-week ramp up period, which I thought was only fair. That's what we normally do, right? You award it to us. I have 2 weeks for people to give their 2-week notice to their other company so they can move to get to that place. So we'd be on site that 2 weeks. And then I got dropped out because we didn't put that one in. 2 weeks. It's like, you can't grade me both ways and toss me out but they did. And it's just like, this is just crazy. So when one project we did with, you know, we always prided ourselves at Booz Allen, we're going to do the right thing. And I had the government asking me to do the wrong thing. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. And this guy had worked for me before. You know, I was a colonel, he was the chief. Now he was the boss. And so I can't do that. But this is what I can do. Well, he did not like that. You're my contractor, you do whatever I tell you to do. No, it's not the values that I have. It's not the way we play this game. And it became a contentious environment. So I just decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. So I got into what I could control. And I can control which clients I work with now.
Gotcha. Yeah, so your values didn't align.
Yeah.
And that's very important, right? Or even if it's, you know, somebody you're working for or somebody you're working with, you know, whether it's a client or, you know, inside of a corporation or something, you have to have that. Everybody's got to be on the same page, it sounds like. Am I correct?
I think so. In fact, as I worked with military, and I think this goes as well with non-military who are looking to change companies. So whoever's looking to change companies, whether it's military to outside, military to civil service, company to company, there's 3 things I think are real important. You have to really like the role, the job description of what you're going to get into. I think you got to like the leadership style of the person. You got to mesh with them. They got to be somebody who can motivate you. And not putting it on them, but their style resonates with you is what I'm trying to say. And then the culture and the values are a fit, right? If they're asking you to break your integrity and you can't do that, that's hard, right? We've all been there. And the boss says, hey, I need you to go do this. Sir, you can't do that. That's just against the rules, but you can do this. Look, I told you what I want you to do. Just go do it. No, sir. Or you decide to sacrifice your values and you go do it. And then you think less of yourself, which is a terrible place to be in. So if you know, let me step back a second. One thing I really work with people on is helping them figure out what they want to do. And what I want to do isn't just always be a program manager, right? For me, I wanted to be a consultant back to the Air Force in San Antonio doing environmental and emergency management. I didn't want to design buildings. I didn't want to do construction. I wanted to manage the programs, right? Like the hazardous waste. I wanted to make sure that we were treating waste properly, preventing it from getting in the environment. So I got pretty specific. When I did that, and that role popped up, I knew it was a fit. And I had to interview with who were going to be my bosses. And I got to evaluate them. And I got to evaluate the office and how clean it was and how people took care of it and how they were on time for things. And after that full day of interviews, I knew that this was an organization I wanted to work for. I interviewed for another one who I had wanted to work for them for 20 years. I went to that meeting for an hour, walked out of there, everything felt wrong. And I just said, they're off my list. And so if you pay attention to that emotion, right, that's inside of you, if you know what you want, you pay attention to whether it fits or not, you can make the right decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's kind of like your gut feeling, right? And it's funny how you anticipate something. This is what I truly want. This is the real thing. This is it. And then you go and what? This is not for me. And so, unfortunately, some people do not walk away from that because they need, just say, a job or they need something else. And they just, like you said, they devalue themselves and they just get in that position. And then, if you're there for so many years or whatever it is, it's hard climbing out of that. You're kind of like locked in.
So here's a tough question. When you're in a situation that is not a fit, right? Not the right role, not the right leader, and not the right values. At what point do you say, I step up, I'm going to resign, I'm going to transfer into the company, I'm going to do something, I cannot stay in this environment? How do you evaluate that?
That's a great question. So, I mean, like a lot of people, I'm going to say, a lot of people are going to go, well, I got to make sure my money's right. I got to make sure, my family's taken care of and all that stuff too, right? And I guess the old me would be like, that would be me, right? And I would agree with a lot of that. So, I don't want to give advice to just like get up and go, right? But the new me thinking now is like, you're only going to live once, and you are you, right? I mean, like, why do you want to show up as the fake you to the person that you're not meant to be? And take that initiative now and go, you know what, I'm done. Obviously you could seek something else first and then go ahead and move on. Or, people might be in that position when they just say, I'll figure it out. I mean, this is not for me. I've been around so long. And I'll mention this to you, Don. I don't know if you're aware, but, I was working for a job for 20 years. And they decided to shut down, and it was around COVID, but it wasn't due to COVID. And, I wanted out for so long, and it wasn't the people. It was just like I was just tired. I was just tired of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that opportunity came. It just came to me, right? And now I'm like, now what? I have no other like huge plans. But so sometimes, it opens up that way. People, at first I was like shocked and I was looking down on myself. I'm like, I have a family to take care of. And then I'm like, you know what? Here's an opportunity to try to change things and make things work. And be myself. And I'll be honest with you. I didn't know who that was yet. I mean? I was there since I was 19, I think, until 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago. So, I mean, like, I grew up there in a way, so I knew nothing else. But yeah, it's, you have to come to that point where you have to just break the silence and just, and start being like, this is not me. I need to be me. And, I don't know how else to tell other people to do it, but, sometimes it's going to be that, thing that happens, that they close the doors, or it might be a family member pushing you, but ultimately it has to be you. Like, you have to step up to the plate and go, I need to move on. So that's a little bit of my story,
I love it.
Yeah, and unfortunately it was a rough ride after that. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. And then now here I am today, talking to you, but, it's been a journey of my own, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
those are tough. And I think it goes back for me to the DISC personality assessment.
Yeah.
Understanding who you are. I'm an SC, call it a peacemaker. So if I'm in a conversation with a bunch of people and things start getting heated, my natural tendency is to try to bring everything down into a respectful, meaningful conversation. And then one time I tried that, and my partner, she sat one cubicle away from me. She said, Don, sometimes arguments need to happen. You need to let them happen. Yeah. I went home that night and was like, she's right in some respects. The thoughts need to get out on the table. Now, there was never any name calling, but it was contentious. So I had to recognize who my personality is. And I tend to stay too long. As an S, I resist conflict. I resist change. So seeing that, I tend to try to stay in the same thing and put up with things. And I've really grown into that of like, no, I need to understand who I am, what I want, and what kind of environment I want to work in. I was with Booz Allen, and I was trying to do certain things, and I was talking to my boss, and they agreed. And then all of a sudden, the boss was making decisions while I was away on another project about my projects. And I was no longer a proposal manager. I didn't find out until I was in the proposal meeting, with a sub, and found out I wasn't in charge anymore. I'm like, what? And to me, the integrity wasn't there anymore. And I was waking up in the middle of the night, cold sweat, nightmares. And I said, nope, this has to change for my health. And I had a conversation with them and said, I am leaving the team. And they didn't want to lose me, which was nice, but I couldn't continue to work for them anymore.
Yeah.
And so I had to make that change. And I've been able now to do that a couple of times.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, like you were able to step into, how you want to put it, like step up to the plate in a way, you know what I mean? And, but you just mentioned something that's very important, your health, devaluing yourself and putting up with other people just to please them in a way. Right. And if you're going to like not get sleep over it and, whatever, cold sweats or, breaking out, whatever happens, right. You get stressed and then you start having you have conditions, you have health conditions because you're stressed out so much. That's very important. So, yeah. I mean, what was it like what for your health reasons? I mean, you were able to make that switch and just say, look, I'm out. I mean, like, was it immediately like you felt relief and you were able to sleep again, or, was it stuff like over time eventually, or?
Well, it was a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Because that person called me up one day and said, you're in an office in the San Antonio building that we need for somebody else. So if you're going to switch teams and be up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee all the time instead of San Antonio, you need to clear out. So I talked to my wife that night. At 7:00 the next morning, we were there. And 3 hours later, my office was empty. I took a picture and there was a key on the desk and I said, office is clear. And that led to some other conversations, I wish you wouldn't go, blah, blah. So, but it was done. So now it was the ramifications of all the change. But yeah, I mean, there was a piece about it, but it took time to be okay with it. And as I work with, I'm going to go back to something I'm working on now, trying to understand. As you're transitioning out of the military, I'll talk that. You have developed a certain personality and a way of doing things and understanding, right? In the military, I didn't have the option to leave unless I wanted to resign my commission. And that still took 6 to 7 months. I had to apply to get rid of my commission. It'd be almost like an investigation. It's not like I can just walk in and give my 2 weeks notice and walk out. So that caused me to put up with unsatisfactory situations. So when I got an unsatisfactory situation in Booz Allen, my natural personality tendency was to try to stay with it and work through this until it got to be that health situation. So as I now work with military and non-military, I'm asking them the question. So tell me about you. Tell me about what you've learned. What way do you behave? So I can understand you better, because what we believe and what we do, how we think, impacts what we want to do. It impacts what kind of job we want, right? It all comes through. So people think about career transition as they just have to write your resume. Oh, there's so much more. You got to understand yourself and what you want, like we just talked about, right? And then you got to network with people. Then you write your resume and your LinkedIn and figure out what your stories you're going to tell in the interview. So there's a whole process to it, but it comes back to understanding your mindset, understanding your beliefs and your thoughts and why you believe that way. And too often we push that away. We don't want to think about it.
You're right. A lot of people push away who they are truly meant to be for somebody else, and then they might not look at it like that. And I just want to go back a little bit and say how you you stepped away from that job and, you know, whatever timeline it was. I mean, look where you are now, right? You had no idea, like, you know, maybe you had an idea, but I would imagine you didn't have a big idea like, hey, this is where I'm going to be in 4 years or whatever, right?
Nope.
And so here you are, you know what I mean? And you went down the unknown path and you came out, you know, with a bright light and, you know, and that's the hard part for a lot of people to take. It really is. But it's unfortunate. And I think it's just the society, it's just the way things are, you know, and it takes people like yourself, you know, to kind of like nudge people a little bit, like, look, you don't have to be here. This is not you. You can move forward. Yeah. So I just wanted to go back and share that, how you showed that up in your story there.
I think we always need to be thinking, how do I say this? It's just like when we're on LinkedIn to find a job. As soon as we find a job, we stop being on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, as much as a networking platform as it is a job hunting platform. So we need to keep engaged and keep networking and keep thinking about, is this the final step? Is this a step into my greater plan? Where do I want to eventually be? You know, how do I get there? And if you have a plan, then when something doesn't feel right, you know kind of where to step over to. And you hopefully have a network. I we were co-commanders at Kirtland in Albuquerque. And he got out at 20 years. He was with a company. They closed his business down and he put out to his network. And boom, he found another job within a week. You know, it worked. But he had a network. Your network is your net worth. Great book, great statement. Mm-hmm. But if you're not nurturing that network, you can't do that. But you also got to be doing the inner work. Mm-hmm. I think that's why it's so important that we have a coach and a mentor. Somebody gets you to think inside of yourself and as a coach and a mentor, maybe help show the way, because that's what they did. And there's lessons learned from what they did. But too often I see people whose mentor is a fishing buddy, a hunting buddy, golf buddy, but they don't really talk about
You're right.
that kind of thing. And we're missing such a great opportunity. The people who are really successful, they have a number of coaches and a number of mentors, and they get down to business. And that mentor and coach hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. They ask tough questions, and they hold people accountable. It's like, hey, tell me why. Tell me more about that. Right? I had my coach one time and said, "What's your relationship with money?" I just, my eyes just bulged when I said I had that question. It's like, wow. So I decided I'm going to go out and walk. It was a couple of days later. I'm going to go walk and think about that for 20 minutes. An hour and a half later, I was still typing on my phone, walking my neighborhood, because just so many thoughts were coming. And that was a fantastic question, right? Well, I got enough money. Why am I doing yard work, right? Why do I do my own car maintenance? My dad did it because he didn't have the big money back then. Not that I'm 7-figure entrepreneur, but after with my military retirement and stuff, we're comfortable. I don't need to do that. And it hurts my body. So why am I doing that? Why haven't I hired up somebody? So that made me think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, coaches are a great thing, mentors. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people put a cost on it. Mm-hmm. That's probably why they don't move forward and get that. Or they don't think they need help. They don't want to show that they need help, And so, with us sharing this, I mean, like, if anybody's listening to this, you get help, just reach out, because it's going to take you so much further, in whatever direction you decide to go. Yeah.
Everything we've talked about tonight, if you're in a tough situation, go find somebody that you can talk to. Don't just try to suffer through it by yourself. Go talk to a couple of people, and you may or may not get the good answer, right? When I was I was waking up in the middle of the night. I went and talked to my old boss, my other old boss in the same company. And they basically said, we've tried to bring things up about that person, and they wouldn't talk to us for 6 months. So we're not going to bring it up. So we can't help you. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, then I kind of knew I was on my own. But I still, I went and talked to some of my peers, right? And he told me, he said, I would never work for that person. In fact, I told my boss that if you sign me to that person, I'll quit. So I had to make that statement. right? I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm changing to a different VP.
Yeah.
And it went so much better.
Yeah, it's crazy. How,
That was hard.
Yeah, I bet it was hard. Yeah. But yeah. So you get stuck sometimes and you just have to find your own way out because other people can't help you or won't help you.
That's right. So here's kind of another one I want to just jump on real quick. Learn from others. So I said about learning from self, but learn from others. So I started a nonprofit the month that COVID started. And gentleman and I had been working together for a year or two, thought we knew each other. I thought I knew him. We just jumped in and started performing instead of sitting back and starting all the, what's the business plan? What's the vision, mission, goals? What's the metrics we're going to, all these different things that a business should have before you start, right? What's the organization structure? How much money do we need as a nonprofit? How are we going to get it? And we said, we're going to figure it out, which is what too many small businesses do. Well, pretty soon I found out that we had different values. I'll try to be nice. We were different values. We were different people. What I thought and what I saw, were different than what he had told me. And I stayed around way too long, and I had other people speaking into me and said, you need to step out of that. You need to step out of that. And I found myself justifying it. And I'd walk away feeling, this is going to be kind of a funny visual, just didn't taste right. It's like you just tasted something, in the yard or something that just was bitter. It's like, so I started examining myself. Why am I doing this? And all of a sudden, one day it tripped. Said, we're done. I'm resigning. It's my own nonprofit. I was the president.
Yeah. People
didn't understand it, but I didn't have a legal authority to oust him because we were 50-50 partners. So I said, I'm just going to step out. And boy, oh boy, was that the right decision. So, but I had a mentor tell me, don't ever partner. It always has to be somebody 51%. You got to have the right documents in place. We just only partner for a certain reason. And I ignored it. My mentor, and I paid the price. So before you step into a partnership, working relationship, truly understand who each other is, work together in a relationship where you really test that out. And if it doesn't feel right, don't go into the next level.
Yeah.
Because that was another thing. All of a sudden, I would be waking up at 3 a.m. and my mind would start running, and I'd get mad, and you'd have nightmares. And it's like, this has got to end, right? So yeah. I hate to say that that's the thing that really finally makes me trip my trigger. But when I'm waking up with nightmares and can't sleep, something's got to change.
Well, at least you know what that is. You know what I mean? So that gets it going.
Right.
Don, I appreciate you sharing everything so far with us. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to have you share with others, how they can connect with you, reach out to you, whether they need your leadership service, for their business or whatever it is. And, so what's the best way to connect with you?
Right now, the best way is through LinkedIn. I'm the only Don with the middle initial L, like Lima, the phonetic alphabet, Gleason. And there's like 67 Don Gleasons, but there's only one with the middle initial L. Okay. And best way is to get on there and just connect with me. You can see a lot of things that I do there. You can see a lot of my history. I'm updating it constantly. But I'm just about ready to launch a new website, which will talk about my career transition coaching and how to connect them with that. I'm going to be releasing here in the next month a digital course and talking about that with a 3-day webinar on front. The webinar will be no cost to join me and to get a lot of value. So I'm really anxious to really help a lot of people that are struggling too. I think some of the guidance that is out that way is not the best guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And like resumes, 95% of resumes really don't speak to the hiring manager about your capability. So here you are trying to tell a company, here's my value, right? You talked about cost earlier on coaching and people don't step forward. So people think about it, well, I want to earn this much salary. Well, to get that much salary, you have to bring that much value to the company. Your value isn't your degree and your certification. It's not the jobs you held. It's what you did with all that. It's how you thought, the thinking, the problem solving, right? The solutions, the impact. And if you don't tell that story, you miss a great opportunity. the guy who's the exact same experience, one guy gets to be, say, in Booz Allen, I'll just use there, could be a senior associate, one could be a vice president. Vastly different pay. On paper, the experience looks the same, but it's the story, what they did with it, that's so different than how they act. So I'm trying to get people to think into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big part of my course. I want to see resumes better so that people can get the right pay.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. So I have one question I ask every guest.
Okay.
And it is, what are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Know who you are. We talked a lot about that, right? And that has been a journey for me. I thought I knew who I was. I did not know. I continue to grow. I continue to learning who I am. So learn who you are. Know what you want. Right? I 5th grade, I knew on the first Earth Day, I knew I wanted to work in an environmental field. And I was really good at math and science in high school. I went to college, got my environmental engineering degree. Unfortunately, it was a recession in 82 when I graduated, so I took a step into the Air Force for 4 years and stayed 27. So I took the opportunity. And I learned. Oh, boy, did I learn. It was great. It was fantastic. I got to do things in the Air Force environmentally that my counterparts on the outside weren't doing anywhere near that. So it was great responsibility. So know what you want. I mean, it just felt right. I think the third, so I say know yourself, know what you want. And I'm going to go back to what we've been talking about today is know when to step away. When does that change? How do you say it? When it's no longer fitting anymore. It's no longer bringing you the energy. It's zapping your energy. Don't stay in it, right? Don't sacrifice your health and your spiritual side, your relationships. I learned something. I remember when I was a captain back in Bitburg, right? I had jumped on we were doing a rapid runway repair competition. All the bases in Germany got together in September. We did this huge competition. Well, we trained all summer long. And my boss said, I want you to take it on, but I still need you to do the other job. So I was 8 hours in the office, 8 hours outside. I wasn't seeing my family. I was missing things. And my wife finally said, look, this isn't going to fly anymore. I didn't come to Germany to sit here all by myself. Mm-hmm. And knew then that I had to really delegate to my team in the office because I still had to be out on the field to work this competition. And so I had to figure out when that breaking point was. And that kind of 3 or 4 times today, we've talked about that breaking point when you need to change. And then don't be afraid to do it because your health is so important. What we tend to do is we stop working out, right? Oh, I can't work out. I get to the office early. I got to stay late. I got to work through lunch. So we're not working out. We're terrible diet. We start getting, health reasons for that way. Our body gets weak, right? We're missing our spiritual side. We don't have any hobbies. We're working 6-7 days a week. And your mental aspect just goes down. And I don't know if there's any job worth it. Is there any promotion worth that? And I say that having made colonel, right? But at some point, I remember when I was a group commander, I'm going way too long on this, I apologize, but when I was a group commander, the secretary said, you're going to pretty much work till 10 o'clock at night, all day Saturday and half a day of Sunday, because that's what my predecessor did. And I said, no, I'm not. She was, you can't get the job done. I said, I'm not doing that. I would go home and I might be 6 or 7 at night, but I was going home for dinner. Mm-hmm. I may get back on the computer at 9 or 10, but I'm at home. And I didn't spend the weekends in the office. And I think that was the right thing to show my people that you can do this job without being in the office all the time, being a workaholic.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And I appreciate sharing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely, Don. I appreciate you coming on, sharing everything you had to share with us. And I know there's probably so much more, but you can't wrap up somebody's whole journey in, just an hour or so. So thank you and appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I encourage everybody to go through their stories and think about them. Yeah. Thank you much.
Thank you.